Hello, people. Welcome to another edition of Friday Night Knives. This is on the channel, of course, A Dose of Drew. I am said Drew, and tonight on this edition, we are looking at the Kizer Gemini button lock. With Christmas being just a couple days away and the holidays upon us, this is a dealer exclusive to KnifeCenter.com. Let's see if we can get that. CPM 4V steel, which is really nice. Black linen micarta, contoured, not inset. Let's see if I can make it. If you can see a little bit right there. You can see the milling inside. It is, however, there are a couple of things to do with it that we will get into in just a minute when it comes to that damn nice design criteria we have. Excuse me. First things first, do a couple of size comparisons for you. We'll come out and get there. I have done a review on the Gemini and it is very similar, but just for a bit of review. Rat 1 in D2, it is definitely smaller than that. Rat 2 in D2, the old R2D2 here. Approximately the same size. You will see that theme here coming up real fast. Okay, so it's right there in between the Rat 1 and Rat 2. Much closer to the Rat 2, if not exactly the same, but bigger in the size. And here we go with the Paramilitary 2 and the Para 3 lightweight. As you can see, much closer to the Para 3. Bigger cutting edge, but no real choil. So you get a little bit of finger space in the Para 3 lightweight that you don't get in the Gemini. All right, and one thing that's a little bit closer in size comparison, we have the Kershaw Blur, and not just any leak, but a random leak. As you can see, it's bigger, it's closer in thickness, size, and in some ways style to the Blur, especially the handles. You can see like the shape, there's a little bit there. But the size, the length, and all that stuff, it really is almost like a blending of these two, which is not a bad thing. So that really definitely gives you an idea of where it is. And, well, we better do a couple more here. Of course, the obligatory Civivi Elementum, as you can see, a little bit more hand space, no choil, and, again, slightly more cutting edge to show. And of course, the last time, though it has not changed, this is how it compares to my Wiener. As you can see, though my Wiener is approximately the same length, and it is approximately the same width, and it is approximately the same thickness, this Gemini is nearly a twin when it comes to size of my Wiener. All right, that being said, all right, one more here, because this is just begs to be done, is this. This is the regular Gemini. And this is of course, the carbon fiber one, as you can see. And it is the non-button lock. It is pretty much exactly the same size. There's a couple of things, however, that we need to bring in here. And if you do not use your rubber-coated scale for your coffee mug, you are underutilizing a non-slip surface. All right, so here's the original 2.95, 3-inch, approximately a little over 3-inch blade, definitely light. This one's a little bit lighter than the liners, but we'll go with it. And here is the button lock. It's about 0.3 of an ounce heavier. There's more mechanisms, there's all sorts of, so it's a little bit heavier. Is it a super noticeable? No, it's about 10%, right? Excuse me. It's about 0.34, 0.36 ounces. It's about 10% approximately. So you have a 10% increase in weight, which isn't so bad, but there's a couple other things. First things first, it being so close to the original Gemini, the ergonomics are on point. It is right there. It's thick in the hand. It fills the hand nicely. You can get a good grip on the saber grip here with the thumb over the top. You can even get up into the scoring position where you got your finger, there, and you can really get some action happening. And the button lock does have good action. almost everything about this knife is fantastic. The design, the aesthetics. I'll get into the design and mechanics first. The aesthetics, as you can see, I like the original Gemini. I think it looks like a classic. It takes a classic knife shape, has a classic knife blade shape that is very usable. There are a couple things. If you look, the choil is a little bit different. So there's a couple of things right there at the base that are a little bit different from blade to blade. So the blades may not transfer exactly, but there's still something useful there. The aesthetics, I think, are beautiful. I like the black linen. It gives it a nice, gives it along the length. You can see this, lots of good stuff. And of course, the general design follows the Gemini, which is already a favorite of the channel for small hands. That's not my issue. The mechanics of it, as far as working, are great. You can use the button lock. The flipper is great. The button has no problem. It is a captive button. So as you can see, there's no gap. There's nothing. The plunge lock works within the blade itself, within the blade tang and pivot itself. Very nice. Keeps a lot of gunk out. A lot of good parts there. And again, the mechanics, it's on bearings. It's got great action. It's snappy. It's smooth, right? It doesn't easily shake. You can't hardly even unlock it. You kind of have to do the flip. You can't wing it, right? There's no liner lock there. As you can see, I'm still used to liner locks recently with the other one. That's not the problem with this knife. In fact, there's very few problems with this knife. Let's see if I can reduce some glare here. Very few problems with this knife. It's really, really good. The biggest one is something I'm going to show you with the other one. It's the overhand grip. As you can see, if I grip this Gemini in the overhand grip, my thumb goes right to the pivot. My finger doesn't have a choil, so I use the flipper tab as leverage to get some torsional stability and control. And then my thumb puts a big old thumbprint right here, so I have a wide surface to manipulate. And then my knuckles and hand does a lot of the manipulation. It goes right there. And as you can see, I have relatively thick thumbs. They're kind of wide. They cover a lot of area. In the pinch grip on this one, that's how you close it. There is no area where I can do this and not close that knife. Once again, it's like having a whole bunch of scallops, and it limits you to one hand placement. I can only do this with this knife. Anything else, I can go here, I can go here. I can possibly go upside down, but yeah, that unlocks it too. Your finger just goes right where the button is. So the other one of the best things about it is that I can get some up close control like this. That's what makes this. I'm not limited to just my thumb wearing out after trying to use it. I can get some really fine control as well as power with the overhand grip on this on a nice narrow bit. You can just choke up for scoring. You can get some torsional control if you choke up to pick a sliver or really get some good point control. There's all sorts of stuff with this one that you can't do with this. Now, I love the 4V, and it is a really good seal. In the linen micarta, the line, it is really, really nice, except for that button. And I'm going to bring a couple out just to even give it a little bit of a show here. Because it's worth noting. One, they say this is the same mechanism as the Cormorant. I have bought a Cormorant and returned it for this same purpose as a much narrower knife. We're talking something about a synesis. There is no place you can put your thumb without disengaging the lock on that. But as you can see, if you turn it, that button just pokes way up. And it's not dished, it's chamfered, and it has some, like frag pattern jimping on there. It's flat on top with some chamfering, so it's a little bit rounded. So you can, only in the middle where it'll work. But that raised button and basically flat top mean that you can't avoid engaging that button if you put your finger here. I can literally do it. Now, there's another knife that has similar problems that we'll go into a little bit. This one does not stick up. This is a CJRB Feldspar button lock. As you can see, even this one, it doesn't really stick up that far above my card. This one has another issue where I wish, my God, why can't we mix these two? Right? Like have that dish in that level thing, round the button over so it's crowned instead of dished or flat, and you're looking good. But even this one does not, like this you can almost disengage with your thumb on that. You kind of have to try, but it doesn't at least fully disengage. It might if there was there, but you can do it with your thumb. This one you can do. In fact, it's almost impossible not to. And just in case you think I'm picking on these, let's look at some others. We can look at the let's look at the Civivi Conspirator button lock. Look, it's flat. It's flat across there, right? And while this one is dished instead of crowned with that divot in the scale and the essential flushness to the scale, you don't ever have that. Like, you have to deliberately push. If I come up here, like, it starts to loosen a little bit, but it won't. Even if I'm gripping hard, it won't. So that flatness, I would like it if it was crowned, but they at least kept it flat. See how it's, let's see if I'm a little too close there. See how when it is engaged, it's just a little bit up compared to when it's here and in your pocket, where that one's just a little bit flat. That's an interesting bit. It's probably what makes it able to partially disengage, but this is the closest to it. Let's look at another, let's look at the OG here on the button lock. I shouldn't say the OG, it's only been a couple of years, but since 2020 in this new button lock craze, Malibu can claim a lot of responsibility for doing a great job at being a button lock and really bringing people back into the fold. This one is flush. Like, you can't hardly, I have to turn it for you to see the button. It's recessed, so there's room for you to get in there. It's flat and slightly crowned. Let's see if I can. I shouldn't say, it might not even be crowned. It might just be chamfered on the edges. In fact, yeah, it looks like it's just chamfered on the edges. And again, it's flat. You can't, again, if I'm rolling my thumb into there when I'm gripping, if I'm just doing a regular grip, that's as much as I can get it to disengage. It does not fully disengage. You can hear that it's starting to hit some of the loose area, but it doesn't fully disengage, while still being extremely secure and everything else. There is nothing that prevents me from having this grip or this grip. No danger, nothing. Let's do one more. One of the more recent versions of a button lock that I think has pretty much, maybe other than the Malibu, nailed it perfectly. And it's another Kizer. This is the Kizer Original. Look at that. It is essentially flush. It is scalloped out, so there's plenty of room. It is a crowned button, so that any little nick on the edge doesn't engage the entire button. It's down. You have to roll up onto it. You know that? Pinch grip. In fact, it's got the thumb studs here that give you a place to do a better, almost kitchen-style pinch grip without disengaging. You have to roll up onto it to disengage it. That right there is 3 button locks. And that doesn't even include, I'm not even including something that's not really a full button lock, but we'll do it because this is the OG on the compression lock, and that's the smock. Does it have the button that pops up? Yes, it absolutely does. But it's way back here. I have a huge space for my thumb. I can do this and really not utilize all the handle space. I can go saber grip. I can stay here and try and utilize some power to really push down. Or I can go up close. And all of those spaces, I have to roll my thumb into a weird place to even be able to get that button to work. Why is it cool? Well, because there's space. There's a place for my thumb to sit that doesn't engage the button. This is not something worth copying unless you can make that safe. This is not safe. The disengagement from a regular hand grip means that there is a way to grip this knife that's for utility and use that is not safe for your fingers, and you can close it on your fingers when you do so. Now, is the flipper tab probably going to prevent it? Possibly. But if you're pinched up here and you're doing something and the tip goes, it's going to close on your fingers. Is the scenario where that happens unlikely? Probably. Is it zero? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. The closest thing that comes to it is the Spider Coast Smock, and it has that button lift. And that is because it is not a true plunge lock. It is a compression lock with a piece of metal welded or bolted on it or riveted or whatever you want to call it. It's not a standard lock. It's not. It is one of the more fun ones. There's a lot of great things about the Smock. Don't get me wrong. It is one of my favorite knives. But especially since it's so unusual. But it's also takes into account the grips that you would use on the knife and keeps it out of the range of accidental disengagement. That's important. And it really, really, really does overshadow a lot of the rest of the knife, especially since it's an already established knife style. This is a great knife. Boy, it would be great if I had honestly, I would rather that this had something like an able lock or some sort of Axis style crossbar lock. Some sort of perpendicular, style bar that prevents the motion of the thing, whatever you want to call it, crossbar style, whatever. Something to do so. With this, yeah, it would be a great one. But you run into other problems there with the design, like that, where you have to worry about things like, does it, how this comes all the way flush, how that is sunk in. There's a lot of design criteria. And I'm going over this because even though it's one thing, it's a pretty big deal. I am not a fan of the cormorant mechanism for all of these reasons. The raised button, the mechanism itself works great. The mechanical operation of it is fine as far as ease, smoothness, and everything. There's just a safety issue that goes directly to the heart of using a knife. Excuse me. And that is, I don't want it to close on my hand. And that's really what comes to the design. Yeah, of course, the design and aesthetics look great. Putting an easy one-handed mechanism on here that doesn't double clutch is great. I really wish it was a crossbar style lock instead of the cormorant, or even better, the original. But we'll come back to that in a minute. So the design, classic Laconico, classic Ray Laconico styling, really, really, really ergonomic, nice smooth lines, definitely fits well in the hand. In this grip for the button lock, the other one, yeah, you can, but you want to limit your use of the grip to saber grip or scoring style, where your finger doesn't roll up into the button. And the mechanics, as far as operation goes, if we ignore the safety issue of the design part of the actual mechanical operation of what's there, flawless, fantastic, smooth, drop shut, right? Smooth drop shut action. Very, very smooth. Very, very hydraulic. No sticking points, no nothing. It's approximately the same everything. Very, very, very good mechanical actuation of what's there. But then we get into the noteworthy points. What's the noteworthy points? You lose an entire hand grip. Right? You lose an entire hand grip so that you can close it by just rolling your thumb into a position that you might use in use. So yeah, there's a problem there. Do I like the 4V? Absolutely. I love the 4V. I love the fact that this is a 4V. What a great blade steel. Right up there with things like Magnet Cut, Vanadis 4E. There's all sorts of great steels. 4V is a fantastic knife blade steel. But the no really point, it just becomes the fact that you lose something to gain something. There's a trade-off here that isn't all that great. Like, I don't have so much problem with the actuation of a liner lock that I want to cut my fingers off if I happen to grip it wrong, that I can grab pretty much every other knife like. There's no reason I can't grab pretty much any other knife like this on an overhand grip. There just isn't. So it becomes the only one. The likelihood of me forgetting that and doing something stupid and cutting my finger halfway because I'll roll onto the button and disengage it before I realize it, pretty high. Pretty freaking high. So its intended purpose as an EDC is there, but its intended purpose as a convenience feature, as a button lock that makes it super easy. Yeah, it makes it easy to disengage and you can get your hand out of the way, but it can also accidentally disengage with your hand in the way. That's not okay. That's something I don't like. Yes, you can pay attention to it. Yes, if it was your only knife, you'd get used to it, but that's just it. There's 2 criteria that I have to adapt to the knife for. It's like, you know what? We need you to change how you do everything so you can have this one knife. No, I don't think so. Sorry, I don't want it that bad. I will carry it less because of this. Is that a big deal? Listen, no, I have another Gemini I probably will carry instead. Is it still really cool? Yeah, it's still really cool, but one of the best things about it is the cost to value ratio. It's about $80 for this thing. And it's great. This is more expensive. The other Vanguard in VG10 is approximately a similar price. So there's some value. The cost of value is really, really, really where this thing shines. You get 4V. You get linen micarta that's grippy even when it's wet. Sometimes even more when it's wet. You get a button lock. You get a great design by Ray Laconico. And Kizer's execution of it. The single greatest thing is this button lock mechanism that has that limits you in your use of the knife. Me, as you can tell, if you haven't guessed by now, I don't like it. I don't like having to adjust because someone decided that they were going to not fully test the design or just decided that they wanted to do that. That it's the same as any other mechanism, and it's not. It actively limits the way you can grip, grab, and utilize the knife. So this really has a problem. Which brings me to the expectations and requests. I expected it to be a little bit better, have a little bit more room due to the width, much like how the original here. I can get my thumb down on the bottom, and it's not bad. I don't have to, but the button lock just didn't. It didn't have that for me. I can get my thumb down here, but it's always running. I mean, I'm running into the button. And that's it. And it would be less of a frustration if they didn't already have such an incredibly superb button lock mechanism in the original. This is a nearly perfect, I don't want to say perfect, but this is a nearly perfect execution of a good button lock. You've got the divot in there. It's recessed so that you don't actually do it. It's not really completely above there except for the crown part. So only the crown gives you positive placement. You can tell when your finger's on the button without looking, because you know when the one point you touch is in center. It actuates flawlessly. It's one of the better mechanisms, and it doesn't accidentally disengage. In fact, the design of this here original gives you a whole pinch grip option with its choil and its design. So the fact that they had a different mechanism that they could have put in there, and maybe this was Knife Center's call, I don't know, I'm not privy to that type of information, but that there was another mechanism is my biggest thing. If this isn't a deal breaker for you or is no big deal, everything else about this knife is fantastic. It is a great deal. This is a great cost to value ratio. It is a good EDC knife. The 4V steel has great edge retention, extraordinary toughness. Not really much as far as corrosion resistance, but it is corrosion resistant. You don't want to leave it sitting in water, but if you use it on a humid day, it's probably not going to rust up on you right quick. So it's great steel. It's a Gemini and a button lock. Yes, it's smooth. Yes, it's got a full flat grind with a long distal taper that goes the entire width. It's got control. You can get up and pick a sliver with it. You can get the saber thumb over grip. You can do all sorts of stuff with it, and it's not going to fail. It is really only one particular condition that this fails in. So everything else it does fantastic. If you don't have a problem with that button lock disengaging, you're like, I never use the overhand grip anyway. I'm a saber grip guy or grip gal. Like, I just saber grip everything. This will never be a problem for you. If you never do an overhand grip or a pinch grip or anything like that, this will never be a problem. And if that's the case, this is a fantastic knife. I mean, honestly, to get anything close to it where you get a super steel, a particle metallurgy steel, rounded scales or anything, contoured scales, like that, you got to go up to one of the higher things where you get where you're talking like titanium, carbon fiber, nested liners, so it's slimmer, all sorts of S35VN. So you do have to go up to a significantly more expensive model to get a lot of the benefits that this one offers. And that's a good thing. For me, I got to give this a 3 stars. Everything else is great, but the fact that for me, the button lock is basically limits my capacity to fully utilize the knife in the ways that I normally would, brings it down. So I'll give it a 3 out of 5 stars. Where it's okay, it's sufficient. I can use it. If it was my only Gemini, I would be more disappointed. It's not. So I can truly appreciate all of the benefits with it. And if I'm really, really worried about that, I can take a different knife. But if it was your only knife and you do use an overhand grip or, whatever you want to call it, it's going to be disappointing because you'll have to rearrange the way you use knives. And when you get another knife that does, you'll be like, oh my God, why did I? The fact that it limits it is its biggest problem. Does it work? Yes, of course. Does it take a little bit of getting used to? Will your use of this knife require some adjustment? Yes, it will. Is there a safety issue because you can grip the knife without thinking and disengage it accidentally? Absolutely. Is it still a good knife? Yes, it is. It is still a good knife. It's still a sufficient knife. If you never did this, if this was your only knife and the 4V steel is sharp as good, you could use this for years. Have a perfectly good, if not excellent experience using this knife and never be none the wiser. You really could. The mechanics are there. You can pull it apart, clean it. If you don't, like I said, if you only use the saber grip with the thumb over the top, then monkey grip, there's a little, you can do it. I'm not really sure what you need to, but you don't want to put your thumb too close to there because, well, you could probably disengage it. It's there. And I'm going to wrap this up at that point. It's a good knife. This is a good knife. It's recommendable. It has a significant flaw, but it's pretty much the only flaw. Everything else is a matter of taste. The execution of the mechanics, the design, fantastic. The only really big flaw is in the design of the button lock itself, where they do almost everything right. That being said, you guys, I'm going to close this up here now. We're coming up close to 30 minutes talking about this here knife, and I spent a lot of time talking about what I don't like, and I hope that it doesn't come across that it's not a bad knife. There's just one significant issue I have with it, and it's a significant issue for me. Will I return the knife? No. Because I had bought the Cormorant and I did return it because I didn't know about it. I did when I got this, and I wanted to thoroughly review a knife that I might actually be able to use with a button lock. And while I can, it's not very well. And it's a scary kind of thought that just the wrong roll of my wrist can make the blade literally close on my fingers pretty much, or try to. So that's an issue for me. For other people, it may not. Other people will be like, what do you mean overhand grip? That's just weird. Isn't that what that's what people do in the kitchen. Like, some people will just be like that. If you are, this is a great knife. Don't let my dissatisfaction with the button lock take you off. It's a good mechanism. It is an otherwise nearly flawless execution of a good design. And with that, I'm going to give it 3 stars, but recommendable with qualifications and caveats to that recommendation as far as your hand grip and your use thing. If you use a lanyard, it's chamfered, deep carry pocket clip, like all of the normal EDC stuff is there. You can do a reverse grip very, very nicely if you're looking to open up some letters or anything like that, or if you need to go up. It has a very good profile for that, where you can maintain control as well as direction. So there's a lot of great things, and it is recommendable. But with that significant flaw in the button lock mechanism, it would take it down from a 5-star knife, highly recommendable, down to a 3-star knife, where I can recommend it with some qualifying statements on there. And that being said, you guys, I'm going to wrap this up. This has been another edition of Friday Night Knives. Watch it twice, comment as much as you like. Be mindful of side effects, and remember to subscribe. This has been your dose, Drew. I am said Drew, and you guys have a great rest of your night.